All right. Welcome to GarageBand 101. I'm kidding. We're gonna go. This is a Java CJUG meeting. I'm recording this so we can hopefully make a video out of it and put it in our website for those who couldn't be here today. Let me first. My name's Freddie Gimme. I'll talk about a little bit myself. Name's Freddie. Was a co-author of the Java 7 recipes book. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's out there. It tells of the new things about the language and essentially in recipe format. So, said I just want to use multi-threaded to solve a very divide and conquer problem. There's a recipe I wrote in there. The JavaPopHouse.com host. If you don't know what that is, it's a podcast that discuss a lot of Java topics. This is not Java Posse. What this is more of an instructional podcast. It tells you, for example, when to use collections versus hash maps, or what are the different types of concurrent collections, or what does volatile means, or how do you do multi-threaded safely, and all these great things. So that's if you've never been there, go visit it. It's I have a Riot. I'm the one who hosts it, and hopefully you'll find it useful too. I work in the financial industry, not too far away from here, just 3 blocks that way. As the director of client technology, my job is to make sure that our software, which is an options trading platform, is fast enough and displays all the information as close to real time as possible. And that usually requires me to really bend the rules of what's acceptable in Java. And it's pretty exciting in the terms of me and my team. We're always trying to figure out, okay, how can we really push these numbers out the quickest way possible? And, we work with the CME. That's one of the exchanges we connect, and it's trying to drink from a hosepipe. There's tons of information that comes down the wire, and because of that, we gain a lot of experience in how to do effective and efficient Java. The last thing is, like Simon said, I'm a CJUG board member. I'm trying to lead a lot of the hackathon, the Adopt.jsr, even the mentorship program. These are initiatives that we're trying to start, and I'm trying to start. And part of it is just trying to make the Java user group something much reachable, and bigger in scope than what it was. So that's what it said. Pay attention to us. We're doing great things this year. We're always trying to innovate, and it'll be good times. So that's me. So the first question comes in is, why move? Why do you want to move from 6 to 7? If you're already sitting here, you probably already made the decision, I probably need to move. But in reality, what happens is Java 6 is end of life. And I'm going to put the notes in our website, so you have access to the presentation. Essentially, Oracle already announced we're not going to maintain it after February. There's not going to be any security updates. There's not going to be any bug fixes. Essentially, the only way you can really get updates on Java 6 is if you have essentially a big contract with Oracle. They're not going to maintain the free one. They're not going to push any updates anymore. Your browser wouldn't even say anything about it. So in that sense, even though 6 works for us in a lot of ways, we do need to start moving to 7 just because we don't want to miss those security updates. And that's really the big reason. The moment that you have enterprise software out there that doesn't have security updates, then you're treading on thin ice. So that's the biggest thing why you want to move. So saying that you're here and saying that you really want to move to 7, what are the things that you need to start thinking about? The very first things that you need to do is see that your dependencies work in 7. For example, if you're working with a continuous integration tool and you have AspectJ, ASM, which are essentially libraries that you download. Sometimes AspectJ has worked for us forever. We didn't need to really go beyond version 1.3 because that worked for us. And we didn't need to rock the boat. It has all the features we needed. We weave whatever we need to weave. An AspectJ it's essentially an aspect-oriented programming for Java that allows you to weave bytecode into it. But what happens is as you go to 7, there are certain things that don't work anymore. And a lot of these plugins, the ones that usually don't work, are the ones that have to deal with bytecode. Because the binary specification for the bytecode changed from 6 to 7. It always changed to major versions. So one of the things you want to do is, in your projects, look at the dependencies, and especially look at the dependencies that deal with bytecode, because those are going to be the ones that you have to check out and figure out if there's support for 7 on that particular dependency that you have. The second thing that you have to make sure that your environment works in 7. So, aside from the actual program itself, you do have, a lot of people will have continuous integration tools. They will have a deployment process. You might be using, like we're using TeamCity, but there's, a billion continuous integration tools out there. There's, version control systems. There's all these other things. And while version control itself, I think it's agnostic on what you're using. Sometimes, for example, TeamCity might not work. Or, the other tools like, Ant might not work. So that's another thing you have to check out and make sure that it works running in 7. For example, for us, one of the biggest things was, we needed to, again, we have install4j. We use it a lot. Version 1.3 was good enough. But when we wanted to update to 7, there were certain new things. There were new hooks. There are new JDKs that you can install and install4j, so they embeds the JDK 7 nicely. So it was time for us to upgrade. For example, and the last one we had a problem with was Emma, which is essentially a static code analyzer. What it does is tries to figure out errors just by looking at your bytecode and say, hey, you're doing something silly here, like doing integer 5, big int equals 3. Something that like doing a comparison of big integer to little integers instead of doing dot equals. So what happened is, because Emma is a static code analyzer, it depended on the bytecode to see if you're making these mistakes. Again, other thing that you have to check for as you're preparing yourself to move to JDK 7. So once you get all your dependencies and your environment saying, my build server works, all that stuff is fine, my dependencies are checked in, or I upgraded my dependencies, then you have to make sure your code works in 7. And most of the time it does, in the sense that a lot of the JDK, the changes from 6 to 7, even though it is a major version shift, they didn't really add too much syntactical sugar that is incompatible. But the couple of things that you do need to watch out for is anything that uses reflection is something that you will have to watch out for, because that's something that doesn't, if a package moved from 6 to 7, and some of them did, when you're using in 7, if you compile it, you get the package not found, or there's, this namespace doesn't exist, and then you can actually fix those. But if you're using reflection, this will not appear until you're actually running deep into your system. So one of the things you probably have to do is, see where you're using reflection, see where you're using package names. And this is for, by show of hands, I might be the only one, but that's fine. Who uses Swing still? Anyone? That's 2 guys. See, J-Twist, he still rocks. Well, for example, Nimbus changed. They make it. They were always saying, if you're using Nimbus, which is essentially a Swing look and feel, we're going to change where it lives from 6 to 7. And they were always telling you, if you're using reflection, which is the way we recommend you to do it, remember to put the if condition if we have the package look and feel installed in this package or in this other package. So so that way you can make the transition from 6 to 7 seamlessly. But if you're being hard-coding where Nimbus is, for example, then you will run into problems when you move from 6 to 7. So anything Sunstar, we've always been warned, anything that is in the Sun package, it could be deprecated, moved, or simply not working as you intended it. If you have something that uses any of the Sunstar packages, you do have to make sure that the functionality is still there, or that the packages are still living where they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. There are other things that Java 7 did correct. These were things that were technically shouldn't have being allowed in the first place, but in 6, just because the way things were, they were allowed, and 7 they fix it. For example, one of the cases where this happens is if you have a tree-set or tree map. Hopefully nobody knows this. You could have the first element be either null or a non-comparable element. And the reason is because it doesn't have anything else to compare with. On Java 6, it didn't compare with anything else, so it managed to get in. In 7, they actually fixed that. When you insert the first element on a tree set or a tree map and there's nothing else, it will compare it against itself, just to ensure that it's not null and that it's actually comparable. So, they actually fixed that. They say you're never supposed to do this, but if you're dependent on that kind of behavior, that's something you have to just check out. Now, another thing that has happened is by show of hands, who uses generics? I want to see some hands now. Okay. Who knows about type erasures? All right. For those who don't know about what type erasures are, is essentially generics are a trick. They're a magic trick that allows you to program thinking that you're doing something that it really doesn't exist. In the sense that if you say a list of integers and a list of doubles, inside the compiler, if you actually look at the disassembled bytecode, there's no generics there. There's just a plain list. And then what happens is, internally, using what is called type erasure, which is try to essentially remove all the generic information out of all this list and collections and essentially generics that you put in, it tries to create bridge methods and binding methods, and it creates all this ugly code that tries to just sort of like pretend doing what you thought it was going to be doing. But a couple of the side effects that happens is with type erasure, when you remove the information, in Java 6, just because there was a couple of bugs, you could have essentially methods with the same name with the same parameters that only differed in generics. For example, you can have a do something method that accepts a list of some object, and another do something method that accepts a list of some other object. And this is still valid. It will give you a warning if you compile with warnings on Java 6. But now, finally, in Java 7, they say, you know what, this is crazy. We cannot deal with this. So in Java 7, it will actually tell you, you can. You have to. They have the same signature. You have to change it. And then they have a list. The good thing about this is I give you the ones that are the ones that are probably the ones that you're going to run into. But they do list everything that has changed in behavior. And that's on that link over there. Oracle actually put essentially a tech note saying, these are all the things that you should watch out for. The ones that we talk about are probably the ones that you're going to run into. But there's darker and more obscure one on the website. So I welcome you. If you ever want to be scared before Christmas, then you can read that. Now, the next step, after you prep your code, you clean your code, you clean your dependencies, you clean your build server, you're ready to go to 7. The one thing that you do have to ask yourself is, do I need 1.6 builds? And the reason is, sometimes if you only have one product and it's out there, and let's say it's just like J2E project that it's front facing, you only have one, it's the same code base you use, then you can just safely upgrade that to 6 to 7, and then you can call it a day, and you'd never look back. But if you happen to have different, sort of release cycles, and you have different versions of your software out there, and you still need to patch those software, and that software is still on 1.6, then you do have to say, oh shoot, I need to make my code compatible with both 6 and 7. So it's something that you have to, as you're planning these things, it's something you have to take into consideration. Do I still want to generate 1.6 builds? In which case, what that means is, the first thing is, if you had any reflection that you were fixing, now you have to make sure that you have a switch to make sure that it works for 6 or make sure that it works for 7. And once you have those things in there, the next thing is making your compiler work for you. The best way to achieve backward compatibility is actually use Java-C's source and target arguments. These are not used often, but it allows you to essentially, let's say that you have a build environment. You don't want to have 2 competing JDKs installed in the same build environment, or you could. It's just tough. So what you want to do is essentially you want to say, let's install 7. And then let's have switches to generate bytecode for 6 if I needed it. So the first way to do that is you specify source and target. And then the third thing is something that is not too well understood, which is it's called the boot class path. And what the boot class path means is just imagine this. The Java-C is capable of producing 7 or 6 bytecode. But what it is not capable of doing it is using the 6 libraries. So what that means is, for example, remember when we're talking about the tree set saying they fixed the bug. The tree set now cannot accept first non-null element that is non-comparable, right? They fixed that in 7, but in 6, let's say that you still need to keep that on 6 because your 6 version is still out there. Then what you want to do is you cannot just throw this Java-C source and targets and let the Java-C, get the current Java 7 classes and sort of like reintroduce the bug so your code can work. The way you do this is the boot class path tells the Java-C compiler to, instead of using the standard Java 7 class libraries, to go out and use the ones that you're going to point to. Now, usually the way it works is like Java 6, Java 7, Java 5, Java 4. All this will have an rt.jar as part of their JDK installation. Now, the rt.jar, and nobody knows what RT stands for. A lot of people think it's real time, but nobody knows. Just legacy now. The rt.jar contains the actual string code, the actual collections code, the actual, hash set implementation. So what you want to do is, if you're going to use the same Java-C compiler to compile for both 6 and 7, if you're targeting 6, you want to point to an rt.jar that is from your 6 build. And then I put in essentially on the link. That's essentially Java-C's documentation and tells you the other flags that you can use, and explains in more details about the boot class path. But in general, and the last link is all the other tools that Oracle has. With all their, this works in 7, and these are the other things you can do if you want to downgrade it to 6, and blah blah blah. But what you want to do is then, if you're building for 6, remember to have an rt.jar, because a lot of people just don't do this. That is either checked into your code as a dependency for 6, or is available as a class environment if you have an end build, or however magic you do it. That you can, when you compile to 6, to specify the boot class path. Now we talk about this part. Now, let's say that you created all your stuff. You built server works, your dependency works. You can generate 7 and 6 code. It's a great day. What do you really do post-upgrade? The very first thing is you do need to revisit your command lines. And this actually happens a lot. When we were in Java, when we were talking about, said a lot of people forget that they fine-tune their garbage collectors. They fine-tune all this stuff. They actually have, if you are one of those that decided to unlock experimental VM options, then you have to go back and look at those. And what this means, these tags are very specific to 6. So, usually a lot of people don't realize how much, baggage they have on their command line arguments to start up. So after you post upgrade, you do need to revisit them and say, what is still valid? What really works? Do I really need this? And especially when it comes to garbage collectors. And the reason is, usually if you're moving to 7, one of the biggest benefits that you get is you have the ability to use the G1. You could actually use it on 6, but essentially people were saying, well, you probably don't want to use it in 6 because it was not fully mature. 7 is that really fully supported. They're doing patches every day. The first 3 patches on 7 were just for performance reasons of the garbage collector. I mean, is mature enough to be actually used. And the great thing about it is that the G1GC is a generational collector that allows you to say, hey, I just want you to not pause longer than magic number here, and then the generational garbage collector will figure out what kind of settings it needs to honor that for you. There's a lot of essentially, Charlie Hunt's wizardry going behind the scenes, where they're trying to figure out, humongous memory allocation, which is the actual technical term for these guys, where they try to figure out how big the actual memory blocks, and how much is taken to garbage collect. Is trying to profile real time your application to figure out, you're beyond startup, you're just maintaining now things, and it adjusts to honor that magic number. And before, if you're really into performance, you really have to sort of go deep and analyze how your garbage collector behaved. In Java 7, that's done for you automatically. So it's one of the things. Once you make the pain of going from 6 to 7, then it's one of the first things you should probably try. It's like, you know what? Let me run this on G1 and see what kind of performance characteristics I get. And I'm usually a very performance centric, just because that's in the environment that we are. That's what it puts the most demands on us. After the post upgrade, really there's not a lot of changes that you have to do in the syntactical sugar per se. There are things that you could just leave there and then you can go home and be happy. Some people would like to start moving into 7 features, which is, for example, the diamond operator. Switch with strings, which is another nice one. These are just syntactical sugar. This just makes the code look prettier. So those you can actually, for some of these, IntelliJ, for example, for the ones that are really a no-brainer, and just since I don't want to go ahead, anybody knows what the diamond operator is? Okay, so the diamond operator is essentially if you have a collection of a map of a set with a list. Usually, if you're doing generics, you have to do collection, open bracket, map, open bracket, list, open bracket, blah, blah, blah. Now, the diamond operator allows you to express saying, once you define it, then you're saying equals new hash map, open bracket, and then you have to say list, open bracket, blah, 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 blah. Now, because Java is Java 7, it essentially knows that the only thing that you want to create is a thing that is going to be assignable to that side. Then it says, we don't need to repeat all this. You just have to say new hash set, open bracket, close bracket, or less than or more than, which is they call the diamond operator. And then the diamond operator, then the compiler will say, okay, I understand what you mean. You mean create this big thing for you to assign over there. So, it just makes it cleaner. And if you've been using IntelliJ, a lot of these things have been just happening in the back because it essentially collapses this stuff for you, and you see it already pretty. But Java 7 fully supports it. Switch with strings, that's just what it means. You can actually use a string for a switch statement. The ability to actually write 10 million and not lose your sight of how many zeros. There's the ability to put the underscore on literals. That's my personal favorite. There's fork join, which is a new, if you're multi-threaded, this is a new framework that allows you to really, really divide and conquer. And it has a work stealing policy, which is the best policy for, divide and conquer methods. And it's very nice and it manages a lot for you. So if you really have divide and conquer problems, then you should really take a look at fork join for maximum performance. NIO2 is the holy grail of anyone who has to work with networks. They finally said our prayers have been answered because it was very cumbersome to deal with networking stuff on regular Java. So it's very nice. I mean, it scales much better. You have access to a lot of the file system stuff. It has, watchers, no more polling the file system to see if your file changed. There's actually callbacks now, which is very nice. And of course, let's not forget Gerbil. Who knows what Gerbil is? The new music synthesizer on Java 7. Haha. My favorite. So a lot of these things, though, it's for the ones that are sort of really monotonic or really you replace this with this, a lot of utilities are out there. IntelliJ includes the Java 6 to 7 migration helpers, which essentially just say, replace everything that you can with diamond operators, and it will figure out where it's syntactically the same and just replace it for you. And same switch with strings, and they have a couple other ones. But in general, I mean, that's again, these are things that you are gaining. So you don't need to change the code, but just be aware of it. If you're moving to 7, and you start coding again, you're creating new parts, that this is available to you for use. JavaFX, if anyone's interested, this is only essentially for the swing guys. Well, not for the swing guys. I scratched that. I mean, there's J2E. It's really, Oracle is pushing JavaFX even on the web, sort of. They're still trying to figure out exactly how they're going to do this, but they're trying to push. So it is part of the latest JDK 7, meaning if you were playing with it before, you have to sort of download this thing on the outside and trying to use it on the outside. Now it's more integrated with it, so it's going to be available for you to use. And that's it. So, we went from pre-upgrade to, code changes, post-upgrade, things that you have available, and essentially these are the experiences we had. It's not very painful. The most painful things that you do have to watch out for is your dependencies, because that does make or break. And if you do have the need to maintain 6 code, then as long as you use the boot class path, source, and target, then you are going to be fine. So with that, we finished this part. Let me just do a couple of things. And like Simon was saying, we're starting a mentorship program. So if you go to cjog.org, there should be a mentorship program link. It's essentially what we're trying to do is, if you're good at what you do and you know who you are, people come and ask you questions all the time, and you say, you know what, I want to give back to the community. Volunteer. It's great to be a mentor. And essentially what happens is we are running this program to match mentors with people that want to learn or have a particular tough problem. And what we're trying to do is essentially almost like paying it forward. If you were a young developer sometime, you make you wrote code that wasn't your proudest moments. We all did. I know I did. I remember doing something like that when I tried to initialize my first variable, where instead of using a loop, I just went C0 equals 0, C1 equals 1. So if you want to pay it forward, please volunteer. And to show where, and the active mentors, I'm first, lead by example. So and what we're trying to do is every meeting, every CJOG meeting, there will be time before or after to be scheduled with mentors. So, if you have a question, then you can come ask me, or, and again, so it's not free consulting. It's most like, shoot, I use JavaFX this way. Do you think it's worth it? And it's like, no, you cannot use JavaFX on a Nokia 386 cell phone, right? So please take a look. And if you really like it, volunteer. Or if you really want help, or you think there's somebody who might use this, then show them where it is so they can actually benefit from the program.